Hey, Mama. Here is part two of last episode. I remember I wanted to tell you that story that goes along with this place. Well, here goes. I really hope you like it. I'm gonna do like a guided tour thing. I know you already saw most everything I've done last episode, but that was just showing you what I've done. Now I'm gonna do a guided tour along the storyline that I've built up around this place so that you can see, not just hear, what the story's gonna be like. I think it'll be really, really cool. So, please forgive me. I'm gonna be switching back and forth between the game monitor and my laptop, which is over to my right. So, I'm gonna be taking my hand on and off the mouse, and every time I do it, it jerks the mouse a little bit. So, I'm not intentionally trying to give you a heart attack or a seizure attack. That's just me turning back and forth from my laptop and the game monitor. So, we're gonna start. Ooh, sorry about that. We're gonna start it off here in the castle, and the way it starts is with a little bit of backstory on the king. This guy, the king, is an ambitious and arrogant man. He's a strong leader. He's a good person, but like your typical normal king, he desires power and immortality. He's not the he's a good guy, but he doesn't have the best of intentions. And the way the story stemmed is from when I was working on that over there and coming up with the idea of these people worship the Wither and, building the Nether portal. So the main religion for this place is Wither worship and Nether reverence. So even though the Wither is worshipped and revered, he's not liked. He's like the bad guy. He's like Mars in Rome. So the king, he promises to keep everyone safe from the Wither. That's his propaganda for being king. Kind of like George Bush with "Read my lips, no new taxes." Like, this guy is, "I'll keep you guys safe from the Wither. I'll be a good king in that way." And they're like, "Yay, you're a good king. You keep us safe." So, in order to do that, he demands an annual tax because, he's paying the Wither to keep him in the Nether. He doesn't want the Nether coming out and hurting the people. So, one year, this is where the guided tour begins. One year, a farmer couldn't pay his tax. And it's this guy right here. For whatever reason, he couldn't pay the tax. So, as the tax, he offers his daughter to the king. And because the girl's really pretty, the king accepts. And she's kept as a personal servant to the king. Well, because she was offered as tax, he ends up keeping her for a long, long time. They end up being really happy together. And one day they end up having a kid behind the queen's back. So they keep the child a secret. They're like, we do not want this getting out. This would be so bad. It'd be bad for his reputation. It'd be bad for her because then she'd be seen as a slut and, all kinds of bad stuff. So they're like, we're keeping this a secret. However, one day, close to the girl's delivering date, the girl finds the king in direct communion with the Wither. Like, he's actually talking to the Wither through some kind of device. And nobody actually knew how the king was keeping them safe from the Wither besides the tax. And, it kind of made sense. They're paying the tax, the king pays the tax to the Wither, and they stay safe. But they didn't actually understand the process that went through it. And the king was actually talking to the Wither, or the Wither's servants. He was actually talking to that area, those people, to keep them safe. And it threw her off. She was like, "Oh my god, this guy is a complete psycho." So when she found out that he was doing that, it was like, "Oh my god, he's keeping the king safe by bribery and deception. How can I trust this guy anymore?" And bah! She flees the castle in horror and returns home to her father on the farm. This guy. Oh, wrong button. This guy over here. She returns to him. And because she was close to her delivering date, she bears the kid there, like not even a week after going back. Actually, whoop. Sorry, going back to the monitor. So the kid ends up growing up there. Now, this boy is special. He is a boy. He's the only son of the king. All the other king's children by his queen were girls. So this kid is the only heir to the throne. Now, the king is not aware that he has a son, that his, for lack of a better term, concubine, his little, his servant girl, he didn't know that she was having, he knew that she was having a kid, but he didn't know that she was having a son. So, not knowing that, but still distraught by the fact that, one, he's losing a kid, two, he's losing somebody who makes him really, really happy, he sends out a whole bunch of search parties, really low-key, behind his wife's back, because, again, they're trying to keep it a secret, they don't want anything to get out. So he's sending out search parties behind his wife's back to find the girl, but he doesn't know where she came from. All he knows is, though, one day a farmer came to him and was like, or some guy came to him and said, "Hey, I can't pay the tax. Here's my daughter. You can have her as tax." So he wasn't paying attention to what the guy was doing. And not only that, it was a long time ago. He had a lot of stuff on his mind between then and now. So he's just sending out search parties looking for her, hoping to get lucky. However, he doesn't find her. She ends up successfully hiding from him, and her little boy gets raised in the farmhouse by his mother and his grandfather. Now, the boy is also unaware to his importance to the kingdom. He doesn't know that he was born to the king. His mother didn't tell him that. She was like, let's not put him in danger that way. Let's let him live a simple life. Let's not let him get involved in all that wither stuff. Let's try and keep him as safe as possible. So he doesn't know anything about being the son of the king. All he knows is that he was born on the farm, and he lives a happy life with his granddad and his mom. He doesn't know why he doesn't have a dad, other than his mom told him that he died a long time ago or something. Alright, where was I? So the king gave up searching for his servant girl after a few years, believing that she must have died or something, because he couldn't find her. And the knowledge of that made him hard and callous because, being a king, he's under a lot of stress. He's got to deal with a lot of people's troubles. He's got to keep up with a whole bunch of stuff. And, the fact that his wife isn't really, she's not helping him in any way. She's not bearing him any heirs to the throne. And the only reason he married her was because he, he liked her at the time, but she was like an extra feather in his hat to get him up to the kingship. That's the only reason why he really married her. Yeah, he liked her, but it wasn't actual. They didn't actually click. So he gets kind of hard and callous, and he begins neglecting his duties to the Wither. He's like, screw it all. I'm not happy. I don't want to do anything. I just want to be left alone for a little bit. So he begins neglecting his duties to the Wither, and redistributing the tax towards means to reinforce the kingdom's longevity. Building thicker walls, irrigation techniques for better crops, more benefits for his citizens, and, still trying to be a good king, but he's just kind of like tired. He's like, I don't want to do any of this anymore. I want to be by myself. Well, it caught up to him. Times grew harder. Drought became a problem. Hot winds began blowing from the nether portal over there, and they would start withering the crops. And the people became restless, and they were like, hey, what's going on here? Help us. Like, you said you'd keep us safe from the weather. And the king, he's like, wait a minute. I got you. I got you. However, he was caught in a catch-22. Like, the people were on his back, but now the Wither's on his back. And the Wither was like, sorry, dude. You've been neglecting me. So, in order to make up for that, I'm going to need a human sacrifice from you. So, the king, naturally, you know, he's not a bad guy. Like, he doesn't have the best of intentions for being king, but he's not a bad guy. And he's like, hell no, I'm not sending you a human sacrifice. That's no way. That's a bad idea. And he started bringing the taxes back to the Wither instead of redistributing them across the kingdom. Well, that made the Wither furious. So, in order to negate the refusal, he demanded 3 sacrifices. Again, the king would only offer the normal tax rate. Human sacrifice would ruin his image, and the kingdom would collapse if the people figured out that he was sacrificing them to the Wither to keep them safe from the Wither. It was like, it didn't make much sense. So, oh, well, my bad. Actually, let me go ahead and turn this to day, because I don't feel like having any Enderman damage in my world. Like, So, enraged, the Wither sent dry storms and lightning upon the kingdom for months until the king bowed. His kingdom ended up being in shambles, and all of his people were on the verge of death. You know, these people, they're getting... Oh, my pick! Come back. I enchanted that sucker. So, you know, there's a bunch of hot air blowing down from this portal here, and it's not getting blocked by the wall. Like, it's blowing over the wall into the town, blowing through the town into the crops, withering them, making it so they don't grow properly, and it's not good. People are starting to catch wither sickness from the contaminated air. They're starting to get burns, you know, sunburnt at night because it's so hot. You know, stuff like that. Where am I? Alright, so his kingdom was in shambles and his people were on the verge of death. So, he promised the Wither anything in return for relief. He was like, please just stop it. I'll offer anything you want. Just stop it. Save my people's life. Save my life. Just stop it. So, somewhat appeased by the humility, the Wither demanded the king's family as recompense for his offenses. And caught as he was, the king saw that he had no other chance, and he gave his wife and 5 daughters to the Wither. So they were taken along that path that I showed you. They were taken along that path to the portal, and they were never seen again. Burdened by grief, the king went to another seeker, and Nether Seekers are people, they're pilgrims that have made the path, or taken the path all the way to the portal, gone into the Nether, and done their pilgrimage business in there. And then they've come back into the world and live among people as like hermits. So the king went to another seeker to see if his family were still alive. And the seeker said that they were, his son included. And the king was like, huh? I don't have a son. What are you talking about? But the seeker told him that he had heard a prophecy during his trip in the Nether from the wisest Nether Seeker. From the wisest Nether Seeker in the world. And this guy, he lives perpetually in the Nether. This gives me an awesome opportunity to start building stuff in the Nether, which I've never had a reason to build stuff in the Nether before. So I like how all this is tying into giving me opportunities to build stuff. Yeah. Ideas and opportunities. So, in the Nether realm. And in the Nether, it had been foretold for years that a descendant of the old royal line, an heir to the throne, though orphaned at birth, would rise from obscurity to claim his birthright depose the king, and restore the kingdom to the glory of the days of old, and would close off the nether realm for good by destroying the Wither and his high priest. The boy, his son, was destined to destroy him and bring about the destruction of the Wither. Grieving still, he's like, the king does not want to hear any of this. He doesn't want to hear how he's going to get deposed. He doesn't hear how somebody else is going to do a better job and find out if his family was still alive, because regardless of if he actually liked his wife, they were still together. They'd still done a lot of stuff together. So, he actually cared for the girl, and he definitely cared for his 5 daughters. So, want to hear all this bullcrap about a prophecy about how he was going to get kicked out. Like, that's not what he wanted. So, he had the Seeker imprisoned and sent to the mines for lying, and then he began the long process. It was tough. The Wither had wrought so much damage that it would take years upon years. And hardened by the loss of his family and the exhaustion and stress of rebuilding, the Wither again. And most successful ruler of them all, then he would, as much as he hated to do it, he would offer 1 sacrifice a year, along with the normal taxes. So the Wither agrees, and in no time flat, the kingdom was once again happy beyond what it was before. It became the crown jewel of the world. Like, everybody was talking about this kingdom, about how great it was, about what a good king there was, about how well it was run, about how beautiful it was. It was the model kingdom. So that's the story of the king. Like, that's the backstory to why the story that we have here is going to happen. Because our story is going to follow young little Buckwheat over here. The guy that got born over... Oh, it's raining? Really? Ain't nobody got time for that. Alright, so our story is going to follow this little guy over here. So, for clarification purposes, I haven't given this guy a name yet. I'm just calling him the boy. Because, for right now, when I'm just getting the bare bones of the story together, I want to keep, set characters separate. I don't want them to become personalized just yet. I mean, they will eventually, if I ever end up writing this out into an actual book. But for now, I just want them to stay somewhat impersonal. So instead of giving the guy a name, I'm just going to call him the boy. And I'll refer to him that all the way through the story, even though a lot of the story, he's not a boy anymore. He's a full-grown man. So, simply for the sake of keeping him a character and not a person, I'm going to call him the boy. Just so you don't get confused. Alright, so the boy was still growing up on the farm. He was now a strapping young lad of 12. He had helped keep the farm intact during the storms, and between him, his grandfather, and his mother, they managed to stay afloat in the hard times. He was a keen man, intelligent, and ambitious like his father. He was still unaware of his birthright, though. But one day, his mother died. During the storms, she had contracted the wither sickness, and it had finally caught up to her. Boy and grandfather alike mourned and grieved for her. They blamed the king because he was supposed to keep them safe from the wither, and obviously he had failed. The taxes had become harsher, and life was growing harder for the poorer families. So one night, the grandfather, in an attempt to appease his grief, went to the local bar in town and got drunk. And while he was there, he let it slip where the boy had come from and who his father was. Nobody believed him. But a guard from the castle, who had heard the rumor going around that the king had been having an affair with one of the servants, and that he had, he'd actually been on one of the search parties looking for this girl. Like, they hadn't known what they were searching. They knew what they were searching for, but they didn't know why he was searching for him. But there were rumors going around. So this guy had been on one of the search parties, and he'd heard the rumor. He was like, "Oh, that's blah, 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 blah. I don't know anything about that." But he heard this guy talking in the bar, and he was like, "Huh? Wait a minute. What about that old rumor? Maybe there was something to that." So he decided to go tell the king. And when the king heard this, his mind immediately went to the prophecy and to his concubine that ran away so many years ago. It was like two emotions. One, he was extraordinarily happy because the one girl that he actually loved, had a romantic connection with, he might be able to see her again. The one girl that actually made him happy, he might be able to see her again. And he was over the moon about it. However, he remembered the prophecy again, and he was like, well, wait a minute. Maybe it'd be a good idea to find this kid, too, because if there's anything to that prophecy, I don't want to be catching the backlash for this, so maybe it might be a good idea to be friends with this kid, So, he immediately sent all the guards out to find the boy and his wife, and find the boy and the king's concubine. Yeah, her. So, the guards, they were eager for some excitement. And after so many years of peace and living the life, they were bored. They were like, we've been training for war, and we haven't been getting any of it. All we've been doing is stuck on guard duty on top of these walls for the longest time. Finally, we're getting out and we're doing something. So, what became a search mission ended up becoming a pillaging session because the guards were too excited. And the day that it happened, the boy was celebrating his 13th birthday. And he was at the church over here with his old friend, the Wither Priest, because, this area worships the Wither, and these guys have the Wither portal right over there. So, they're very, very respectful of the Wither. They have a nice big building here dedicated to the Wither, and they want to keep him happy. So, all the children in the town would go to the church to learn their letters and their numbers. All the children in the town would go to the church. I think that's what I said. They would go to this guy to learn their letters and their numbers and become educated, because this was the guy that knew everything. He knew how to read, he knew how to write, he knew how to do math, the whole shebang. So this is where everybody went to do their learning. And the priest and the boy had developed kind of a special connection. They'd become friends beyond just teacher and student. They'd actually bonded. And so for his 13th birthday, the boy decided that he wanted to go spend it. The boy and his grandfather decided to go spend it with the Wither Priest. Have some fun with some friends. Well, that's when the guards arrived. And fearing for the kid's life, the Wither Priest and his grandfather told the boy about the prophecy. And, they told him what he was supposed to do, what his destiny was going to be. And they sent him off along the river from a secret entrance under the church, which is right under here. Ta-da! There's gonna be, I might use this, or I might use that hole over there to make the entrance to this. But the idea is, they'll be up here, yada yada yada, yay, 13th birthday, and then boom, guards. Oh no! Just like that. And this is where they sent the kid. They were like, okay, you go down that way, go down that way for a little bit, get out of sight, and just stay hidden. Just stay hidden. And then once all the excitement boils down, you can come back into town. Well, the boy pushed off and set off down the tributary to the wilderness, but he made the mistake of looking back. and he looked back just in time to see the guards throw a hood over the old man's face and punch him to the ground. You know, the Wither Priest's face. And they'd already tied up his granddad. He was on the ground with a bag over his face too. So, blinded by panic and anger, he turned around and set about to fighting the guards. Well, he lost because he's one guy. He doesn't, he's not trained, and these guards are trained, and there's a lot of them, so they're like, easy. And he got captured. He was taken to the castle with a lot of his friends, including his grandfather, and one by one, the king saw them and questioned them about the boy's whereabouts. Now, the way he did it was, like a single file. One person would go in at a time, and then they would leave out another door, so they couldn't go back and talk to the other people going to be questioned. That way he could prevent rumors from spreading and prevent them from formulating answers to the questions, the answers he didn't want. He wanted genuine answers. So one by one, he questioned them about the boy's whereabouts and if they knew anything about the girl. And now everybody knew the boy that was being spoken of. They had grown up with him, but none of them knew the truth of his heritage except for his grandfather. So when the boy himself was taken in for questioning, he didn't know what was going on. Once he was face to face with the king, his father, the questioning commenced. Where had he grown up? What was his occupation? Who was his family? And finally, the question that the king desperately wanted answers. Where was his mother? Now, the kid was enraged that the king would have the audacity to mention his mother after the atrocities he had committed to kill her. He was supposed to keep them safe from the Wither, and he failed, and his mother died because this king guy had failed to keep them safe from the Wither. So, he's got a lot of a grudge right there against this guy. So, the boy rushed the king with a weapon he snatched from the guard, and a fight ensued in which the boy was inadvertently tossed from the king's balcony. Remember that place I showed you, the Minas Tirith place? He was tossed from up there. Right up there. And he was tossed from there right in there. Into the lake below. And the king hadn't really learned anything from the boy or his friends that proved that the kid was a threat. So he sent everybody back to their homes except for a select few. He kept the boy's grandfather because he reminded him of the girl. They father, daughter, they kind of look alike. And he also kept a little girl for the annual sacrifice. Now, the boy somehow survived the fall, but he suffered a broken leg, and his face and torso were permanently scarred from the fight and the fall. Now, there's going to be a ferryman who lives here. He regulates traffic across the lake. See how I've got a road going from back... There's going to be people back there, and there's going to be a road going along here, and if these people want to come up to the castle, or they want to go see the Wither, then they have to go through this way. They have to cross the lake. And that's what the ferryman's for. He gets people across the lake. Because see, there's the other road over there. And it goes that way into the forest, and it goes around this way and up through here. So this guy, he finds the kid in the lake. And... wait, where was I? The ferryman who watched and tended the lake found him and took him to his home to recover. Because he wasn't just going to leave the kid out there. I mean, he was still alive. What kind of heartless wretch would do that to a kid? So, once he was sufficiently recovered, the boy, understanding that he wasn't safe anywhere near the castle, took his leave from the kind ferryman and traveled to a nearby kingdom. This place over here. Hang on. That's not how you spell set. So, he traveled from over here all the way to over here. Again, the rain. Really? Now, I haven't come up with any kind of imaginative name for this place. I'm just calling it Lake Town for the time being. But this place is really important to the story. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have the road follow this river biome here. There really isn't a lot of river in the biome, so I'm going to fill in a lot of the water patches and just turn it into an actual path, an actual roadway. I feel like it would look kind of cool. Just surround it. You're basically traveling down a giant ravine. And then you get to here. I'm not going to fill this in. This will be water. And you travel along by boat until you get to the lake here. That's how that works. And then the town... Is that a creeper? No. It's just a flower. How did you spawn right there? You are a special flower. Anyway, the town itself is going to be right here. On this area here. And this is where the boy travels to. So he lives there for a few years. And while he was there, he learned about a new side of life. One that was not governed by fear and pain. Agriculture is not the main source of food. Instead, it's fish and fruit. And these people were a happy and peaceful people. They had a ruler, but he was not a harsh dictator. He had no reason to be. And part of their happiness was in part to their religion. The religion of the tree. I am going to build a big tree on this island right here. See? Ta-da! Kaboom. Sacred Tree Island. And I don't know if I'm going to chop down all of the trees here and save just the big ones and then build the tree around that, or if I'm going to leave them all. Wait, hang on. I don't know if I'm going to chop all the trees down and just build the tree, or if I'm going to leave the trees and build the tree around it. I don't know. I've never built a tree before, so I don't know how that's going to work. We'll see. I just know I want to build a tree on this island. And, alright. So, on an island in the middle of the central lake, ta-da! There was a large tree. And these people believed that the tree gave life to the lake and to the land around the lake. They worshipped the tree because they believed that the tree, which fed them and gave them prosperity and happiness, also showed them how they should live their lives, a model of solidarity and giving spirits. In worship and respect, even though they lived in a forest, they cut down a tree only once a year, and the wood was split half to the priests for an offering to the sacred tree and for the making of sacred objects, and the rest to the ruler to distribute to the town for important structures. Now the boy was accepted into their society as one of their own, and he lived there for many years. He learned to live with others in a new kind of harmony, and he came to love and worship the sacred tree along with them. But he never forgot his mother, or the prophecy. Though they were a peaceful people, they were not placid, and practiced an art of guerrilla warfare as a means of self-defense against any who would come to threaten them or the sacred tree. More so the sacred tree than themselves. And the boy, remembering how inexperienced as he had been that fateful night so long ago, learned everything that he could from them about this art. As of yet, he's still unaware of his birthright and his heritage, so he's not out to depose the king because he wants to depose the king, but he still wants to take the king down because he's mad about his mom dying. So he still sought to take the king down in revenge for his mother's death and the atrocities against his hometown so long ago. He began making plans to return to the castle to kill the king who had made his life so terrible, and finally he made the last preparations, and with many tears he told them what he was destined to do, and bid farewell to his new friends and family, and he left for the castle. So, he leaves this happy little tree place here, and he goes back down the road. Going down the road, and more road, plains and mountains. Alright, so he gets back to this place over here. This is where he's going to live for a little bit. Secretly, he lived in the town outside the castle, and he began to put his plan into action. He made daily visits back and forth from the castle to map its layout and daily routines, and when the moment was right, he made his move. One night he snuck into the castle, and using the arts he had learned and modified from the lake people, he began to make his way stealthily to the king's chambers. However, it was not meant to be. He made an error, and he snuck instead into his grandfather's room. Knife poised over his head, prepared to make the plunge, the boy made his way to the bed and was about to stab when a beam of moonlight passed over his grandfather's face. The boy had thought that his grandfather was dead. In shock, he dropped the knife at the bedside and accidentally knocked over a vase, shattering it into pieces. His grandfather awoke and saw him and the knife and went to raise the alarm, but the boy revealed himself to his grandfather, and together they wept in happiness at the reunion. They end up catching up until the wee hours of the morning, exchanging news and stories. Very little of it was good news. The boy was shocked and enraged by how bad things had gotten. Taxes were exorbitantly high, disappearances were becoming commonplace, the guards and patrols were ungoverned, and the weather around the portal was growing worse. Well, finally the boy had to make his leave, promising his grandfather that he would come back to free him and take him to the lake. But it was too late. On his way back through the castle, the boy was caught. He was brought before the king as a trespasser and an assassin. The king again questioned the boy as to his intentions, but this time he didn't recognize him as the boy of 10 years ago who had attacked him and fallen off the balcony. Recognizing this, the boy stated only that his intentions were to kill him and remained silent and anonymous for all other questions. Realizing he was getting nowhere, the king sentenced the boy to life imprisonment in the mines. He was taken to the mines. He was taken to the mines where all the criminals of the kingdom served their time in sweat and blood. Alright. Remember how I said I hadn't built the mines over there? I decided that wasn't the right place for it. Well, I didn't say I wasn't going to rebuild the mines. I do want to rebuild them, and I found the perfect place for them. It's going to take a little minute to get over there, but I want you to see how it works. So, this road here is the road that leads down to the mines. How I'm going to get it up this hill, I haven't got a clue yet, but actually, it may just follow the river. Yeah, I think it's just going to follow the river. But for our purposes, we're just going to follow the river because it takes us where we need to go. And following the river. I need to widen that out some. That looks a little skimpy. Going down the river. There's my boat. Alright, so now we're going to make a sharp right. And we're going to go across to this river, cross over the lava pit. Ouch, burn. And we're going to go down this river. And there it is. This is where I'm planning on putting the mines. Down here, I'm going to have a port entrance. The way they get the goods in and out of the mines is by boat. So they're going to put all the goods in a boat and then send them off down that way. Oh, it's turning night again. What made me decide to put the mines here was that right there. Look at how imposing that is. How cool is that? Remember how in my old design it was open to the sky? I hadn't decided what kind of roof I want to put on it. I've never been able to decide what kind of roof I want to put on it. So, when I saw this, I decided that looks like a perfect roof for it. I'll just build the hole, dig the hole inside this mountaintop. And it'll go all the way down to the bottom. See how thick it is? That would easily hold the shaft that I want to build. And actually, the shaft would start deeper down. This will be mostly living quarters. Alright, so let's just leave the camera right there. Don't move, chicken. There we go. Alright. He was taken to the mines where all the criminals of the kingdom served their time in sweat and blood. Many served past their sentences because the overlords of the mines didn't care what the offenses were, only that they had enough workers to continue the output. Many of the workers died from the overwork. But that did not quench the boy's spirit. He worked day in and day out as hard as he could, mining more ore than many of the other workers. He was put into one of the high security cells because of the nature of his offense, and he made friends with one of the older workers in his cell. He found out that his new friend hated the king as much, if not more, than he did himself. The man had once been a freelance sword in his younger days, one of the best swords in the business. During the Old War, he had saved this one man's life, and from then on they had become like brothers. They trusted each other to the death, bound by blood and honor. It seemed that nothing could sever their friendship. That man was the current king back when he was still a nobody. They formed their own little band of cell swords, becoming incredibly famous. They were the most trustworthy and reliable mercenary band in the land. Together, him and the king had worked their way up the food chain, eventually making their way into high society. The future king became interested in politics and started making a name for himself out in the world, while the swordsman was content with the money and stature that they had acquired. He found himself a pretty girl from one of the nobles and prepared to settle down to a quiet life, far removed from the hecticness that was the life of a mercenary. But it was not to be. The king, due to his new political stature, began acquiring higher and higher positions with more and more authority, and it turned out that he also loved the girl that his friend loved and was courting her behind his friend's back. So just before the swordsman was going to propose, the king pulled a fast one and accused his friend of treason, calling into question the nature of one of their jobs that they had had to pull a while ago as mercenaries, accusing him of attempted assassination of one of the royal family. Which was partially true. The job had been inside the castle, and one of the royal family had gotten close to getting killed. But the target was actually a lesser noble who was stirring up drama, and he was taken care of as per the parameters of the job. However, as there was no evidence against the accusation, the swordsman was sent to the mines for life, and the king was free to marry the girl. And with the clout of her family behind his campaign, he was soon promoted to high nobility just beneath the king. The swordsman had spent years upon years sitting in the mines waiting for the right opportunity to break free and get his revenge. The boy grew close to this man, to the swordsman, and he shared the news of the past 40 years with him, about how the king was now the king, about the problems with the Wither and the portal, and how things seemed to be getting worse and worse as time went by. Bonded by hatred, they started making plans to escape, to wreak their vengeance on the king who had betrayed them. The overseers did not allow weapons of any kind in the mines, and all the tools were taken from them after the shift was over, so any kind of armed breakout was virtually impossible. So they employed strategy. Soon, however, they became close friends and beyond just a common hatred, and the swordsman began training the boy to become a master of most any weapon whenever they got the chance. Together they formed their own little band of workers. Gradually, the overseers took notice of the boy and how good of a worker and leader he seemed to be among his peers, and began to offer him privileges. Soon he had extra rations and extended break periods. Soon he became a captain of a troop, and from there he steadily grew in rank to just under overseer. The swordsman moved up with him because as the boy grew in influence, he used it to move his friend up with him. In that place he had no name. He was known only by the scars on his face and the limp that he still had from his fall from the castle. But though he had no name, he was the workers' favorite. He was fair when he was allowed to be, and he cared for the men's welfare in as much as he could. One day, the Grand Overseer asked to talk to him personally, and took him to the top of the mines up to the surface. Right here. Right here. To this grand, impressive outlook. From the overlook, the boy, now a grown man in his 40s, could see the plains and the river that had taken him here meandering off into the distance. Still in chains, locked to the rocks behind the door, he listened to the Grand Overseer tell him about the beauty of the surroundings and the opulence of the kingdom. And then he was shocked to hear that the Grand Overseer wanted to promote him to second in command, just under himself. The boy began formulating a plan in his mind. As second in command, he could access this overlook without chains, and from there escape was not merely a fleeting fantasy. The boy accepted the offer. He went down and began discussing their new options with the swordsman. Being second in command to the Grand Overseer meant that the boy could basically do anything that he wanted, so he moved the swordsman up to his personal assistant as soon as he could. They decided that the best use of their authority was to take over the mine from the bottom up and to overthrow the current overseers, and then use the mines as their base of operations and the workers as their army. So together they began implementing new policies that improved the workers' efficiency and output while also improving their conditions and lifestyle. The workers loved them. But there was an unfortunate side effect. The Grand Overseer and his minions were still in contact with the king, and at the first signs of the system beginning to change out of their favor, They reported secretly back to the king and claimed that the workers were rioting and they needed military enforcement. It was too soon for the boy and the boy and the swordsman's plan to actually work, and the military arrival threw a wrench into the works. Realizing that the Grand Overseer's opinion of them had changed for the worse, they decided to go ahead and escape. One night, the Grand Overseer sent an assassin into their chambers to take care of them, and a bloody battle ensued. Both the swordsman and the boy were expecting something of that nature, and they quickly dispatched the assassin, but the Grand Overseer had played a double bluff on him, and had sent in a whole military troop to check on the assassin with the instructions to kill everyone in the room, including the assassin. Against those odds, the swordsman and the boy fled for their lives, fighting every step of the way. They made their way to the overlook, and they both jumped into the double river from the waterfall and trekked across the mountains, relying on a map that they had memorized from the Grand Overseer's quarters. Unfortunately, it was winter, so it was bleak and miserable and cold on the mountaintops. Snow flurried down and avalanches rumbled in the distance. Even wrapped as they were in fur jackets, leather clothes, the cold still seeped into their bones. A full-blown blizzard descended upon them, and they ended up getting separated. Lost and cold, the boy found a place to hunker down for the night, praying that his friend was still alive. The next morning, he dug himself out of the snow and began to walk again. The clouds were gone, but the thick snow had created a totally different world. He was lost. The blizzard had completely muddled his sense of direction, and his memory of the map made no sense anymore with his current surroundings. I just looked up to see that it was snowing. That's hilarious. But the thick snow had created a totally different world. He was lost. The blizzard had completely muddled his sense of direction, and his memory of the map made no sense anymore with his current surroundings. So he set off walking, hoping that he could at least find the swordsman and maybe some food. 3 days passed, and he passed peak after peak without finding anything or anyone. Finally, though, he saw something different. Just beyond the last peak were some plains. Grateful to see anything that meant protection from the elements, he stumbled forward before the last of his strength gave out. But he didn't see the cliff before him, and he tripped and fell into the river beneath. The cold water zapped his beleaguered body of what little strength it had left. But as the river swept him along, he saw a jut out into the river, and on that jut out there was a tree. It reminded him of the sacred tree, and he began to pray. Guided by some supernatural power and with the last of his willpower, he made it to the jut out, and he collapsed before the altar before the tree. Luckily for him, this tree was also sacred, but to another people, and they were coming to perform their monthly ritual for the tree. Alright, so, gotta move my character again. Alright, so what happened was they jumped into... The jut out's going to come to the sandstone block here. The water is going to go down into that hole, and it's going to be like a underwater waterfall kind of thing. Underwater waterfall? Underground waterfall. So what they do is they jump into the river, make their way out, and I don't know if I want them to go that way or that way, but I'm initially planning on them going this way. And they're going to trek across the mountains. Oh, such a long, hard trek. Oh my god. And they're going to make their way along through here. Somewhere in here they get lost in a blizzard. I'm not sure where yet. Probably somewhere up there where there's a whole bunch of snow. And they make their way along through here. And this is where he sees the plains. These are the plains he sees. He sees these plains right here. Like, he makes it all the way to right up here, and he's like, plains! But as he's stumbling forward, he falls down to here. And I'm gonna dig this out and make this into an actual river, because right now it's just kind of not. It's supposed to be a river. Like, it's a river biome, but it just didn't generate any water. So I'm gonna have to fix that. So he falls into the river, and it's flowing this way, and he sees this jut out here with the tree on it. I don't know if I'm going to build another tree, or if I'm going to leave that one. I may just leave that one. But I'm also going to build an altar on this, and what he's going to do is he's going to go down here, wash up here, and this is where the other people find him. They find him right here. They found him and carried him to their secret home in the forest. Dun, da, da, da. There's the forest right there. My voice is starting to hurt from so much talking. Holy crap, it's been 50 minutes already? Oh my gosh. I'll try and hurry this up for you, Mama. I've still got a lot more story left, but I know you don't have a lot of time to watch episodes, so I'll try and hurry this up for you. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to brush that. They found him and carried him to their secret home in the forest. When he woke up, he began to interact with his saviors, and he realized that they were the inhabitants of the legendary secret valley beyond the haunted forest that was constantly talked about in his village. It was his favorite story growing up. Intrigued, he asked them all kinds of questions and began to learn about them and their habits, and about the valley itself while he recovered from his near-death experience in the mountains. He also asked them if they had found his traveling companion by any chance, when they had found him, but they told him they had not. Only he had been found at the tree. Silently, the boy grieved for another loss in his life. But his saviors told him many things about their culture, about their religion, about their history, just a wealth of knowledge. They also told him about their problems. Fires would randomly start without cause, and there was very little water to fight them. There were constant hot winds that were burning the people's skin and dry lightning storms. Their way of life was at stake. They also told him that he was the chosen one. In their culture, again, there was a prophecy that the great evil of the plateau would return and would burn the forest until it was as bare as the plains without. But when the rain ceased to fall from a cloudy sky, and without hands trees burst into never-ending flames that could not be quenched, that the tree would bring the chosen one to them, and he would bring the rains back and defeat the evil that roamed the plateau. The people begged him to stop the fires and defeat the evil. The boy was touched by their plight. He saw the scars where they had been burned. He saw the half-devoured trees that had obviously once stood tall and proud, sentinels of the ages. He saw the graves dotting the valley. They needed help, and they believed he was the one to bring it. And then he remembered from years ago how the portal had ravaged his hometown in just a similar manner. Looking again at the people around him, he saw signs of the wither sickness. They were dying just as his mother had. Anger filled him. The wither must be stopped. The king must be stopped. They both had to die. Senseless death and pain was spreading across the land because of the wither's cruelty and the king's willful carelessness. So, he promised the people that he would save them and defeat the great evil. He would bring the rains back. The tree had brought him to them, and he would not fail them. Overjoyed, the valley people cheered and showed him the secret exit to the haunted forest and guided him to the river. The boy was ecstatic to find that the exit was not far away from his hometown. The lighthouse outside the wall beckoned him inside, and with great excitement, the boy bid farewell to his guide and made his way into town. Ta-da! There's town right there. It was really, really close. I decided to put the secret valley right here because it's actually a valley. It's surrounded by the plateau here. It's open over there, but then mountains over here. And I decided to make it secret because the only way in is over there, where nobody lives. And this naturally generated hole right here, I swear, that is naturally generated. I did not make that. So, when I saw that, I was like, I have to make use of this. I have to. There's no way I can't use that. So, they took him out through here, and boom, there was his hometown. So, he found some way to cross the river, and he started living in there. Now, there is a lot more to this story. I haven't written a whole much more beyond this point, but I have the basic idea in my head. So, I'll probably save that for another time. I'm really sorry for making both these episodes really, really long. But, I hope you like them. It's been a lot of fun doing all this planning and story making, inadvertent though it was. So, let me know what you think. I'll talk to you later. Bye!